Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So, welcome to the show, Kate St. Vincent Vogel.
Thanks so much. It's a treat to be here.
The treat is going to be mutual. Listeners, I spoke to Kate a couple of days ago, and a fellow adoptee, huge heart. And we've come up with a slightly different format for today. So we're going to talk about we're going to share a key healing moment each, and then we're going to see where the conversation goes. So as the guest, and because I'm obviously a British gentleman anyway, right?
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody's ever called me that. Anyway, it's going to be ladies first, Kate. So healing moments. So what healing moments comes to your mind?
Thanks so much, Simon. I think what immediately came to mind is a phone call I got late on a Saturday night, a few months after my mom died. My adoptive mom passed away. And my dad had been super upset. He was lost without my mom. If any couple was meant to be together, they were. And so he, like, part of him was gone with her dying of ovarian cancer. And so I got a call late on a Saturday night. My husband and I had just started watching a video together, and my husband answered the phone, and he didn't know who it was, and he handed it to me. He said, "It's for you." And the stranger on the phone asked me if my name was Kate St. Vincent Vogel, and if my husband was James Vogel, and if my dad was Jim St. Vincent. And with that, I was sure that someone would be calling me, notifying next of kin that my dad had died, because he was so upset. I thought for sure he'd um, gone off the road, so upset. And then this woman said, "Well, I gave birth to a baby girl in this hospital on this date. Would that be you?" And I'm a lawyer by training, so when she said that, I'm like, I don't, I don't know if it was me or not. I don't know how many baby girls were born in the hospital on that date. So she said, "Well, I have the non-identifying information on this couple who adopted that baby. Can I read it to you?" And I thought, yeah, sure. Because I thought for sure there would have been several kids born that date, and it was going to be someone else. What I didn't know is that there was only one baby girl born in the hospital on that date. And so she knew right away that it was me, but she had the patience to say, "Hey, let me share this with you." And so if you can imagine having just lost a parent, and having this stranger read to you all the stories that you heard around the table growing up, having dinner, all the little things that people don't know about a person unless they're family, unless they're really deep, good friends. And there was this woman, this stranger, just rattling off one after another, all these things about my mom and my dad. And and I realized who it was. My husband said, "Who is it?" Because he could see my face just turning white. And so I scrolled down on a piece of paper. "It's my birth mother." So he shut off the video because he knew we weren't going to be watching the rest of the time that day. and I had been such a great fit in my adopted family. I just felt really as if I belonged there. And I always wondered who this woman had been. I had assumed that she had been a college girl who got in trouble, and she was. But um, that question in my mind, I didn't want to go looking for her, because I knew that it would hurt my mom. My sister would throw out, when she'd want to do something and my mom wouldn't let her. She'd say, "Oh, well, my real mom would let me." And my mom would just start breaking down in tears. It's like, "But I am your real mom. I'm the one who's raising you." And so I wanted to be the good girl. I wanted to be the good adoptee. And so I swore that I would never go looking. And then all of a sudden here, this woman had found me. And I had, because of what the interplay between my sister and my mom, I had sworn I wouldn't go looking. I had no desire to look. And it was as if I was trying to tell myself that I needed to block this woman out from my family and my life. And here she was. She had reached out to me, and from that moment, in that connection, I realized that she was someone who had lost something dear to her. And it wasn't until that phone call that I had that new understanding that of this deep loss that birth mothers had, that this particular birth mother had, that my birth mother had, and I realized that uh, that I needed to have a connection with her and understand her in order to be able to in order to give her closure, but also in order for me to have in order that it was something that I needed to and just how deeply I would need that, how I thought it would be a one-time thing, and it turned out it would be something much more. So that was my sudden understanding that particular moment.
So you said she had lost something dear to her.
Mm-hmm.
So was this about seeing seeing your own value at a deeper level? Do you think, or feeling it? I don't know. What was it? You've been quite left brainy, right, on the understanding. And I thought you, like, when I get to my one, because we kind of yeah, my one's really emotional, and you've described this quite detached. So tell us, you know.
Well, when I was little, you know, when I first found out that I was adopted, it was because it felt I got so I found out I was adopted because of something that happened to my sister. I was maybe 6, and my sister was a couple years older. And what happened was that she got in a fight with a neighbor boy, and they kind of sparred back and forth with each other. And then he said, "Well, yeah, but you're adopted." And she's like, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Yeah, you are." And she said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Well, go ask your mother." And so she did. And 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 I didn't know any of this. All I knew, I was like down in the kitchen, still in my jammies, and I just heard my sister and my mom started to scream at each other upstairs. And I just thought, la la la, I am not a part of this. I'm just gonna talk to my cat. And and then my sister comes running downstairs and she says, Katie, guess what? Guess what? We're adopted. And don't know that your listeners can know I have dark hair and dark eyes, and my parents have dark hair and dark eyes. My sister, blonde hair, blue eyed. So, and I'd seen a show, Sesame Street, where you kind of pick out which one here just aren't like the others. So I was so terrible. I looked at her and I said, "Well, Amy, maybe you are, but I'm not." And I think that was the worst thing I could have told her in that moment. And so like she's like, what do I say to that? And my mom comes running downstairs and she says, and she's crying and she says, it's true. We didn't know how to tell you. You were too young at first to understand, we thought, and then you were too old. How do we bring it up? And she said, it doesn't change anything. We still love you. And I just thought it for me, I was a child of many. I liked making up stories. So for me, it gave me a chance to make up more stories about who I was. And it also gave the possibility. I was really a big fan of I Dream of Jeannie. And I thought, oh, this might be that I'm really a genie. and I am made of magic. And I just liked the possibilities of trying out different ideas about who I could be besides the person that I was.
Yeah. Wow. So you didn't answer my question about how you felt
No.
when your mum called, when your bio mum called, when your birth mother called.
Wait.
You went somewhere. You said you went white.
Oh, I
Then
went white.
you went all rational on me, and I'm looking for a I'm looking to ask you how you why it was your healing, why was it your healing moment?
Why was it healing? Because I finally understood um, that there was one more than one story. Um, that that it wasn't just my perspective that mattered, that it was her perspective that mattered too. That I could have been this other person had she decided to keep me. Um, and I wasn't. I took a different trajectory. But in her mind, it wasn't until that moment that I understood that in her mind, I was still that other person. And um, and
Oh,
we needed to have we needed to connect in order to bring all that together.
how did you feel about that connection?
I thought it was just going to be a one-time thing. I thought I would meet, I would get the story, that would be it. And so I really thought until that moment that adoption was my adoption had been closed up, um, and so and she had to go through this group that would give her 2 years of counseling in order to understand what that person, what position that other person on the triad might be in order to, um, before they would you have a connect you with the detective who would then track down the other person so that you could actually connect with the other person, just so that you would be prepared for what would happen, what might happen. And so she was totally prepared, and I was just woof all of a sudden.
She
But she was super.
she'd had to go
She
through 2 years
Yes,
counseling before.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
and so
how did you
her
feel when
reaction to me, like being patient and say, well, let me read you this non-identifying information. That was part of like the practice that she had gone through, or the preparations that she had been through to say, if the other person like needs to catch up with you, this is the dialogue that you can follow, just to help them prepare, help them be able to know what can happen once they reach out. And
yeah
I'm sorry, what was your question? You had a question in there as I'm babbling.
yeah um how did you how did you feel when you found out that she'd done 2 years counseling to get to the point?
Mm, I was really appreciative um, because of the preparation that she had gone through. She was very patient with me, and whatever I was willing to give, she she was open to whatever connection I was willing to give. She was glad that we were just able to have a 2 hour conversation then, or actually it was like 3 or 4 hours conversation that night. Um, and I thought I wanted to meet her. I thought we would just have a one meeting and that would be it. Because that's all that I thought I needed. But it turns out like she's a whole person. And it wasn't until then like, oh, she's a whole person. And and um and that's part of my hope that people will gain from our discussion is like we tend to the person that we don't know on the other part of the triad or the other areas of the constellations. It's like they are a whole person that is worthy of knowing. As my dad said when I told him about Val contacting me, um, and making sure that it was okay with him that I met her. And this would be just to meet her. He said, you know, Kate, there's always enough love to go around. And I think that really important for me to hear. So I was just really fortunate to have all these people around me that just um, showed love and patience, and were able to model for me how I can be in return. And so when Val and I finally met, um, and I had I had a toddler, and I was just newly pregnant. I realized that, this was, um, I was realizing like this, she could become a grandmother for my girls that my mom can't be, and I'm really fortunate that that has been the case.
You kind of skipped over the fact that you chatted for 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, we talked so much. Well, and it was over that conversation that I learned just why it was such a good match. And she had been told um, when the social workers had found my parents as a match for me, and they told her that, she's like, "Is this what they tell all the girls?" Sort of thing. And it was really a match for match. That's at that conversation we found. My parents had the same, like my dad was Italian, her dad was Italian, her mom was Irish. My mom had some Irish in her, and then also found out her dad was an engineer, my dad was an engineer. Just really like at all the things that we could have in common, we did. She was from a family. She had 10 brothers and sisters, and my husband is from one of 10. She has 8 sisters. My husband has 8 sisters. So just interesting similarities, connections in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to the dear word. She'd lost something dear to her.
Mm.
To what
Mm-hmm.
extent did you feel dear to her, precious, valued? Because that's the flip of what many adoptees feel, right?
Mm.
Exact opposite.
I was yeah, and I know there are some adoptees who feel angry, who feel abandoned. Um, and I bought into the to the notion that I was chosen, that I was the chosen one. That's really disturbing. Um,
Mm.
but um, my and I think it was easier for me because I know adoptees who have found out that their birth parents had kids and then had them and gave them up for adoption, and so that's a different story. That feels different, and yet it's it's hard to remember, and yet we must try to remember in those circumstances. It's not the individual that's being given up. It's it's the situation, because they don't know you at that point, right? Because you're um, it's just a baby. It's just a baby. It's everything that it's a baby. So, but it's a um, it's like when you have a baby, you learn, like you just get to know the personality, right? As you interact with that baby, and we are who we are from the start, I think. But it's when a mother is in that situation, and giving up the child, it's not it's not a personal thing. It's a dire situation. The situation is dire for a mother to make that choice. So um, I feel I've in speaking with adoption groups, with birth mother groups, it's just I really have uh, great sympathy for those mothers who have been put in that situation.
And often the plan's made, well, most of the time, if you're adopted as a baby, the plan is made
Mm-hmm.
before you have come into the world,
Yeah, before you're in. Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
not like,
Exactly.
oh, I don't want this one.
Right, right, exactly.
because the
It's
plan's being made.
yeah,
it is totally
yeah,
about
yeah.
that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was adopted in the late 60s, like they called it an adoption plan, and mostly it was well, for underage girls it was their parents who were making that decision, making that plan. It was really they uh, no it was no choice, no real choice that they had in doing it. It's just really difficult situation. Complicated. Adoption is a complicated situation. Yeah.
What year were you born, Kate?
66.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was born 67. So,
I think we're almost like exactly a year apart.
right. Okay. You're a
Yeah,
Capricorn as well.
I am a Capricorn. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's your birthday? Oh,
January 3rd.
January 3rd.
Yeah,
Okay. Guess what?
you're
Birthday.
the fourth, aren't you?
Yeah, the
Are
4th.
you the fourth? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I was adopted at 5 weeks also.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is my husband's, that's right around my husband's birthday. So yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
cool.
it's fun. Yeah.
Um, so is there anything else you want to it comes to mind on on that? Well, it was a start of the healing, I guess, wasn't it? It was, I don't know.
Yeah, and healing, I think healing is a journey, right? That's some of the things we were talking about. And it's a step at a time. It's not a destination, but a journey.
Yeah. So my view's a bit wacko on this, right? I compared to it's a bit contra most. I, I believe that we're all whole, and it's a return. It's a return to
Mhm.
the whole.
It's a different understanding of what whole is then.
Yeah. So some people think whole means never feeling insecure again.
Mm.
Um, I'm not a religious guy, but it's the best way I've heard about expressing this is um, there's yeah is how do I put this? It's the journey to God
Mhm.
and then the journey in God, and then I would
Mhm.
say it's the journey. It's seeing that you are whole, and then seeing it deeper and deeper and deeper.
Mhm.
So I've come up with this new word yesterday. It's called I, I think I mentioned it on the podcast that I did yesterday, recorded yesterday. In case people, I haven't shared it with you. It's called a sin site.
Mhm.
Sin site. So sin site. It's an abbreviation of semi insight, and it's the difference between um, it's the, like it's it's the difference between thinking a joke is funny and laughing. It's the difference between a nice concept in your head and an embodied understanding. Something. It's the difference between yeah, theory and practice.
Mhm.
That's this insight. So it's like seeing that you're whole, and then seeing that you're whole, and it's just
Mhm.
a deepening of the extent to which you see its whole. Um,
Yeah. And I find I I unfortunately am still stuck in the theory part of all of this. It's like I have to keep reminding myself that it's okay, right? It's like I am so good at saying, or I like to think that I'm good at saying, we need to be open. We need to uh, consider, be open ourselves to the other person's point of view, and be compassionate not only to ourselves, well, not only with others but with ourselves. And I need to constantly remind myself to do that. It's like in meditation, and I'm not good at meditation. I don't practice it as often as I should, but that need to bring the mind back to the practice. Like when my mind keeps wandering, I need to keep bringing it back and focus. And it's a constant. I need that constant reminder.
Well, can I be a bit coachy?
Sure, I could use
Um,
it.
like it's a seeing thing. So in fact, I can't do it justice in a couple of sentences. Did I mention a guy called Rupert Spira to you the other day?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you did.
Okay, Rupert Spira. He's my. I'm trying to get him on the podcast.
Oh, good.
He's not in the adoption space. He doesn't like being called this, but people call him a spiritual teacher.
Mm.
If you, I think if you Google him, Rupert Spira, and something like meditation is who we are, not what we do,
Oh,
then then that will shift some things for you.
I like that.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
my healing moment was reading a letter that
Mm.
from my birth mother to a social worker that
Mm.
I got in my file when I got my adoption file 6, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember exactly.
Mm.
So, listeners, I read this to Kate when we spoke a couple of days ago, and she loved it. So I'm going to read it to you as well.
Mm.
So
Good.
it's from her. It's on a letterhead paper from her with her mum and dad's address on it. So my birth mum was 23. She was still living at home. And so it's got the address on, and it's dated Monday,
Mm.
and it's date stamped the 9th of February 1967.
Mm.
So the letter starts: Dear Mrs. Bellis, thank you for everything concerning last Friday. So last Friday is the day that my birth mother took me to the agency, and
Mm.
and my mum and dad collected. I was going to buy a teddy bear for David. So David is the name that
Mm.
my birth mother gave me. Before I was Simon Jonathan Ben, I was David Anthony Farr, right? So
Mm.
I was going to buy a teddy bear for David in Liverpool, home of the Beatles. Everybody's heard of that. Sorry, that's just on Friday. But because we met a lot of traffic, I didn't have time.
Mm.
I thought the parents wouldn't mind if he had a little something from me, and was upset when I couldn't get him one, as in a teddy bear. Please, do you think it would be possible to buy him a little one for you to send on to him? I don't know whether this is highly irregular or not, but I would like him to have a little something from me. Also, thinking I was giving him a teddy and didn't do so makes me awful sad when I see teddies on display, as I did in Lewis's, so that's a store, on Saturday. Please may I send you one to give him. Sorry to trouble you. Yours faithfully, Patricia J. Flower. So as I read that letter, and I distinctly remember the reading it, the tears absolutely cascaded down my face as, and I felt compassion for this lady in a desperate state. I felt how dear I was to her. uh, and I realized how wrong I'd been in my 20 seconds of animosity towards Pat. Mm-hmm. And I realized how that, again, say 20 seconds of anger towards her had actually been like a barrier between us. And reading the letter, realizing how much she loved me, realized how much she was, how desperate a state she was in, I felt the barrier between us disappear, and I felt like we were just one being. And I was reading all this in a letter that she'd written, whatever it was, 46, 47, 48 years before I read it. And she never knew that I was going to see this. And, you know, the anger towards her, the 20 seconds of anger towards her, had been probably 8 years before I read this letter. And I just saw how wrong, and that the healing power was basically we became two different people became one, and I was part of her, she was part of me.
It's interesting how we become larger than who we are when we open ourselves to that understanding, when we open ourselves to connecting with others, connecting with someone who is a part of us. The anger that you felt, what I want to understand the anger. That was when you learned that the teddy bear had been from her?
Yeah. And the anger was, I won't swear, but there was anger, there was swearing at the time. She didn't love me enough to keep me. What sort of consolation prize as a teddy bear? And this happened to me when I was 40, as you know, some people I talk about this quite a lot, so I'm sorry, listeners, if you've heard that one before, but I had never thought about my birth mother for the first 40 years of my life, and then I had this anger to her when so some people will say, well, that's coming out of the fog, but so I would say I was, if that's true, you know, if I went along with that, I'd say we came out of the fog. And then I came out of the fog into some mist, and then a series in a series of other insights and epiphanies that aren't quite as easy to explain as that. The mist, when at stages, just got thinner and thinner and thinner. So it was like a 80% mix. So if you manage just to get imagine a scale of darkness from zero, you know, from 100 to zero, it went each insight, it jumped. So the insight, it went from 80 to 70, 70 to 60, 60 to 50. And I would say that this was probably the final one where I went from mist to brilliant daylight.
Yeah. And I would hope for others too that continuing to gain greater understanding of where the person is coming from will will dissipate their anger too, any anger that they might feel as well. I've always found that when I close myself off, I'm frustrated with the other person. And when I reach out and try and gain a greater understanding, that's when I've been able to make deeper connections, gain greater understanding, not only of them, but also of myself. And I hope um, that others might find that as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I want to continue the metaphor in terms of what happened after the brilliant sunshine, right? So into the brilliant
Mm-hmm.
sunshine, and the sky is deep blue,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
cloudless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what happens is clouds come in,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and there's a cloud of insecurity. There's a
Mm-hmm.
so somebody says you're insecure, Simon, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I think, oh, am I? Um, why didn't that person invite me back? Or we've invited them. Why do I have to be the one that organizes trips to the pub? Actually,
Mm-hmm.
invites trips to the
Yeah.
pub. Why
Yeah.
why don't they? Right.
Yeah.
So so there's moments of insecurity, there's moments of desire to control, there's moments of all that stuff that Nancy Verrier talks about in the primal wound.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and and what and I had a conversation with uh, Rebecca Autumn Sanson. So
Mm-hmm.
she came on the podcast ages ago. She's done a film with Nancy, and it's called Reckoning
Mm-hmm.
Primal Wound. And I asked her, what comes to mind when she hears this phrase "thriving adoptees," and she said, "Well, I don't think I am one."
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Well, you seem to be doing great to me. You're out there in the world. You seem bubbly, and you're having." And I think because this was my idea, and I've heard it in a lot of other people, they think that it's blue skies. It's 100% blue skies all the way.
Mm-hmm.
So let me make this about me. I've seen the brilliant blue sky, and then I get upset about the clouds
Yeah.
because I've hit nirvana, and now I'm back to and you see, and now I'm feeling there's a transitory feeling of insecurity, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back.
Yeah.
I'm going back into the mist, the clouds. The clouds are gathering, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back to where I started. I'm going back to I'm going back to the mist, and the good times are over. There's only there's only famine ahead, and we're sold this idea that they all lived happily ever after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not, yeah, we're sold this, not in the just in the adoption space, but after, enlightenment is once and done. It's like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
we it's like riding a bike. So we
Yeah.
think that most things we think, um, I've learnt it, and now I know it, and it's going to be
Yeah.
that way forever.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
isn't. There are going to be
Right.
insecurity, and the clouds become a problem. The clouds became a problem for me,
Yeah.
and
Well, and that's
and then they're not anymore.
yeah, and that's why I really appreciate your thoughts about what wholeness is. That wholeness is uh what we were talking about earlier about how wholeness includes the imperfections, and that is part of what it is to be human and whole. And I really like um, the gloss of happily ever after is, well, how do you define that happily, right? It's because it's a continuous process of learning, that um, we are not whole, we are not perfect communicators, and we need to remain in connection with others, and work on those connections in order to understand. And that was a process for me too. A couple of things, to say an answer, or to affirm that I've had the same experiences. First, I want to point out this little pumpkin in the back was given to me on that first meeting that Val had when she drove down from Cleveland down to North Carolina. And she brought that along. It was something that she made with her hands, and little pottery thing. And it was symbolic in that my birth father, who had passed, who had died in a motorcycle accident before she had had a chance to find me, he had been a sculptor. So it was a way to kind of have him present too. Um, and that was a meeting where I thought, okay, now we've met, everything is fine. That's all I need. And it wasn't, and I would hear from her every once in a while, as in like once every other year sort of thing after that. And it wasn't until my older daughter had her first communion, and one of Jim's sisters was over for the celebration, and she asked, well, where's Val? Why isn't she here? And it wasn't until that sister asked me that I realized, oh, I should be inviting Val to these things because she should be part of this. And part of it is just we life happens, and we don't we don't always do the things that we should, because it not because it's intentionally to hurt someone, just because we're imperfect, and we don't think to, or at least I'm trying to tell myself that that's what it is. Um, and so I started reaching out more to Val after that. And so now she has been, when I told Dad, and Dad had said, there's always enough love to go around. He said, but I am not sharing holidays. It's hard enough to share with your husband. And we actually did sharing a holiday together. Val has been a part of Thanksgivings, and we're still working on a Christmas. After with COVID, it's been hard. The She was at my daughter's wedding. She was grandparent, walked down the aisle. Part of my daughter's wedding. It's like she is a part of the family, and yet she asked, like 15 years after we had after she found me, she asked, I thought we were great, we had a great relationship, we were in reunion 15 years, and she said, how, and she asked me in a quiet moment that we had together, she said, how can you ever forgive me for what I did to you? It's like I was just so shocked that it still worried her. She's still worried about it. And it's just, it, I had known, I've gotten close with other birth parents since she had connected with me, and they had said, this is an experience that we live with every day. And it wasn't until Val asked that of me that I understood the depth of what that was. And it wasn't until and so I thought, like, we had this talk, it's like, oh my God, it's like, you are, family, it's like,
That's
you need to forgive yourself, because I don't like it, it's like, I don't, it's not like I'm just so glad that you're in my life, kind of thing. So yeah.
that that's to put what you just said together with my metaphor, right? That's
Yeah.
just a really persistently reoccurring cloud.
Yeah.
It's a reoccurring cloud. It's not always there.
Yeah.
There'll be moments when it's there, and there's
Yeah.
moments when it's not.
Yeah.
And this is the really critical thing, right? This is the really critical thing. The cloud is the thought. We're not the thought. We're
Yeah.
not the cloud.
Yeah.
We're the sky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, did we talk about this the other day? Because I've been thinking about it.
We talked about oceans and waves. It was ocean and waves.
Ocean and waves, yeah,
Yeah.
oceans and waves. But
But
okay, oceans and waves, right?
yeah.
This is like wave
Hmm.
management. This is
Hmm.
what human beings do, but this is what I've done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh, me too. Yeah.
Wave
Yeah.
management. I'm talking
Yeah.
about, let's forget about waves, right? Let's go back to the
Mm.
cloud thing because we
I like the clouds because you can prepare
cloud,
for the weather.
sorry,
You can prepare for the weather if you know what's coming,
you know what's coming.
or you've seen this cloud before, so you know,
You've
oh, I
seen this
gotta
cloud before,
pull out the
okay?
umbrella. Hmm.
Yeah,
Mm.
cloud management doesn't work. Well, it hasn't. I haven't figured a way of doing it.
Mm.
Kids can do it actually.
Mm.
I've taught cloud management in elementary schools, and they're really good at it. But as adults, we can't.
Mm.
Right? We can't. But we're
We
trying.
like to think that we can control it,
We
and
like
you
to think
can't.
that we can
Yeah.
control it, and we think. Do you have miserable weather in the United States? We have.
Oh my God.
We have
I live in
miserable.
Minnesota, Simon.
We live. We live in. We have miserable weather. How
Oh,
does
yeah.
that work? How does that work? It's a conditioning. Somebody tells us, like when we're kids, we love splashing around in the rain. And then when we
Mm.
grow up, we think, oh no, miserable weather. Right, this is my thing. Anyway, cloud management, cloud management. So we see a cloud coming and we think, I've got to zap that cloud.
Mm. Hmm.
I've got to zap that cloud. I've got
Hmm.
I've got this thought has come back into my head that I'm not good enough, or
Hmm.
um, your mum's, your bio mum's recurring cloud
Hmm.
is, will you ever forgive me? It's a
Yeah.
recurring cloud. It's not there all the time. And it's not who she is. We're not our thoughts.
Mm. We're bigger than that. Yeah.
We're bigger than that. We're the whole bloody
Yeah.
sky.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that because I've always wanted to be able to just fly. You ever have those dreams where you're flying?
Yeah.
Like those are the best. We need more of that in the world. Um, and your cloud metaphor, I really like because there was one point at which like kind of in understanding yourself, understanding how to deal with the clouds. Um, when I was a teen, I had approached my mom, my adopted mom, about I said, you know, I've noticed that when it gets cloudy out, I get sad. Um, and and she said, well, my mom was very Swedish and very practical. And she's like, well, you just have to stop that. It's like, it's it and
She was
it's like that's how.
advocating. She was advocating cloud management. Most
Yeah,
parents do advocate cloud
yeah,
management.
yeah. And it wasn't how I was ready to hear it. It's like I thought she was saying just ignore it, but she was saying to manage it. And I think sometimes we're not ready to hear what the other person has to say, and we need to make sure that we keep ourselves open for that, and
We
be kind to ourselves that we're not in a position yet to hear that.
99.9% of us believe, are raised in the idea that we should try and manage our thoughts,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
despite the fact it doesn't work.
It's so true. Yeah.
We're fixated on the clouds and we forget about the sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Self-awareness, self-compassion. Self-compassion is like um, how would that work in cloud management terms? Self-compassion is seeing with the sky, not getting upset about a cloud.
Yeah. You know,
I should feel it's self-compassion for most people. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm on a roll.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Self-compassion.
Go for it.
It
Mm-hmm.
it's like saying, um, uh, I want a different cloud.
Mm-hmm.
I'm self-compassion is saying like I'm people. You don't. The self that we're being compassionate about is the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
The,
Yeah.
the sky doesn't give a damn what clouds appear or don't appear.
Yeah. And um, the more we see the clouds, the more it might be easier to remember that where we are standing, um, the clouds look different depending on where we stand from the ground. Um, when we are holding ourselves low, it just looks very gray above us. But if we can lift ourselves up or remember what it looks like from a higher perspective, from the 3,000-foot view, the clouds below look very fluffy and white on top. They're very they're very pretty from up there and not dark and dreary like they are from down below. So sometimes it's just a matter of remembering what perspective, where we need to stand.
I think it's simpler than that. Okay.
Okay.
It's seeing that we're the sky.
Mm-hmm. We're bigger than everything. Bigger than that little moment, that little burst.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like a good place to draw it in. Thank you.
Great.
I've loved.
Thank you so
I've loved
much.
it. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you so much.
listeners. This has been a bit of an experiment. You're still here, so it worked.
Thank you,
Maybe
everyone. Thank
1%.
you for the chance to be able to share a little bit
Yeah.
with your listeners.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, listeners. We'll be normal service will be resumed. We're trying something new next time. I love new formats. The most
Great.
important thing is that we're enjoying it and we're learning, and I think we both learned a lot today. Thank you, listeners, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Bye bye.